Picture this. It's March 2020. COVID is spreading globally. Stock markets are crashing. The Dow drops 3,000 points in a single day. Panic is everywhere, but while most people watch their portfolios get destroyed, some investors are quietly making massive profits. How? They understand something called the flight to safety theory, and today I'm going to teach you exactly how it works and how to use it. What I'm about to show you isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. This is a time-tested strategy that's been used by institutional investors, hedge funds, and smart money for decades. Every single time there's been a major crisis in the past 50 years, wars, terrorist attacks, pandemics, financial meltdowns, the same predictable pattern happens in currency markets. This is how I make money from war. Every time. The flight to safety theory is based on a simple human truth. When people get scared, they run to what feels safe. This happens in every aspect of life. When there's a thunderstorm, you don't stand under a tree. You run inside a building. When there's a fire, you don't head toward the flames. You head toward the exits. And when there's financial uncertainty, investors don't gamble with risky assets. They flee to safety. Now, when I say people get scared, I'm not just talking about individual investors checking their phones and panicking. I'm talking about massive institutional investors. When these giants get nervous, they move mountains of money, and they all move it to the same places at the same time. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're managing a $50 billion pension fund. Then news breaks that there's a major conflict in the Middle East, or a new pandemic is spreading, or there's a financial crisis brewing. What do? You don't try to pick winning stocks during a crisis, you immediately move that money to the safest assets you can find. And you're not the only one. Thousands of other fund managers are making the exact same decision at the exact same moment. This creates enormous, concentrated demand for safe assets, driving their prices up rapidly. This is why flight to safety is so predictable and so profitable. It's not based on complex economic theories or unpredictable market dynamics. It's based on human psychology, and human psychology doesn't change. Fear drives the same behavior today that it drove 50 years ago. Now, you might be wondering, why focus on currencies? Why not just buy gold or treasury bonds like everyone talks about? Here's the thing, currencies are actually the purest play on flight to safety, and most people completely overlook them. Think about it this way, when crisis hits, what's the first thing that happens? International trade gets disrupted, supply chains break down. All of this creates massive demand for stable currencies that everyone trusts. Let me give you a concrete example from recent history. During the 2022 Russia-Ukraine conflict, European investors got terrified about having a war on their doorstep. They started selling euros and buying US dollars en masse. The euro to USD currency pair fell from about 1.14 to 0.95 over the course of several months. That's a nearly 17% move. Now, if you had understood flight to safety theory and positioned yourself to profit from dollar strength against the euro, you would have made 17% while European stock markets were crashing and European investors were losing money. You weren't just protecting your wealth, you were actively profiting from the crisis. Not all currencies are created equal when it comes to flight to safety. There's actually a clear hierarchy of which currencies attract the most scared money during crisis periods. At the top of the hierarchy sits the US dollar. The dollar dominates during crisis because it's the world's reserve currency. When international business happens, it happens in dollars. When countries buy oil, they buy it in dollars. When banks settle international transactions, they do it in dollars. Think of the dollar like English in the language world. English isn't necessarily the most beautiful or logical language, but it's what everyone learns because it's the standard for international communication. The dollar is the same for international finance. Even if investors don't love America, they trust that other people will accept dollars. The second tier includes currencies from countries with strong institutions and stable political systems. The Swiss franc has traditionally been a major safe haven because Switzerland has a long history of political neutrality and financial stability. The Japanese yen also attracts safe haven flows, not because Japan's economy is growing rapidly, but because Japan has huge foreign currency reserves and very low debt to GDP ratios in certain metrics that matter to institutional investors. Let's talk about how regular investors can actually profit from these moves. The easiest way is through currency ETFs, which are exchange-traded funds that track specific currencies or currency baskets. For dollar strength plays, the most popular ETF is UUP, Invesco DB US Dollar Index Bullish Fund. This fund goes up when the US dollar strengthens against a basket of major currencies including the euro, yen, pound, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, and Swiss franc. When flight to safety drives money toward the dollar, UUP automatically goes up. During the 2020 COVID crisis, UUP gained over 8% in just a few weeks as investors fled to dollar safety. During the 2022 Russia-Ukraine conflict, UUP gained over 15% as European investors moved money to US assets. For more specific plays, there are ETFs that track individual currency pairs. FXC tracks the euro versus the dollar. FXB tracks the British pound. FXY tracks the Japanese yen. The beauty of using ETFs is simplicity. You just buy the ETF that aligns with your flight to safety thesis and hold it until the crisis passes.